The screens flickered simultaneously across every device on Earth. Phones, televisions, computer monitors, digital billboards, even the tiny displays on microwaves and car radios. Everything connected to any network suddenly displayed the same image, a being that defied human comprehension, its form shifting between crystalline structures and flowing energy patterns. Sarah Chen dropped her coffee mug as her laptop screen blazed with alien light. Around her, the bustling Seattle coffee shop fell into absolute silence. Every patron stared at their devices with the same expression of terror and disbelief. The being spoke, its voice a harmonic convergence that seemed to emanate from the air itself rather than the speakers. Humans of Earth, we are the convergence. We have observed your species for 3,000 of your years. Today, we deliver your final judgment. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for her phone to call her daughter in Portland, but the device remained locked on the alien broadcast. Around the globe, similar scenes played out in homes, offices, and public spaces as 7 billion humans watched their death sentence unfold in real time. Your species demonstrates an unacceptable pattern of violence, territorial expansion, and resource depletion. The entity continued, its form pulsing with colors that had no names in human language. You have proven incapable of peaceful coexistence with yourselves or your planetary ecosystem. More critically, your rapid technological advancement threatens to spread this destructive pattern beyond your world. The image shifted, showing vast fleets of ships positioned around Earth's orbit, vessels that seemed to bend space around themselves, their surfaces reflecting stars that shouldn't be visible from their positions. The sight made Sarah's stomach lurch with a primal fear that spoke to humanity's deepest evolutionary memories of being prey. We have eliminated 17 species that exhibited similar patterns. Each time, we hope for different outcomes. Each time, those species chose violence over wisdom, expansion over sustainability, domination over cooperation. You are no exception. In government bunkers around the world, military leaders frantically work to establish communications, to mount some kind of defense, but their satellites had gone dark, their systems compromised. President Harrison watched from the White House Situation Room as every attempt at retaliation failed before it could begin. However, the alien's voice took on what might have been interpreted as compassion, though the translation felt uncertain. We are not without mercy. We offer you what we offer the others. 72 hours to surrender your species voluntarily. Submit to humane termination, and your suffering will be minimal. Resist, and the process will be considerably more painful. Sarah found her voice, though she wasn't sure why she bothered speaking to a recording. What about our children? Our art? Our love? As if responding to her specifically, the alien's image turned toward her screen. Your individual attachments are noted and catalogued. Your creative expressions have been preserved for academic study. Your capacity for emotional bonding, while admirable, does not outweigh your species' destructive potential. The countdown began, 72 hours and ticking downward in the corner of every screen on the planet. Red numbers that would measure the final hours of human civilization. Spend this time in reflection, the entity concluded. Consider your species' legacy. Accept that your termination serves the greater harmony of the galaxy. We will return when the countdown reaches 0. The screens returned to normal, but the damage was done. Within minutes, riots broke out in major cities. Governments collapsed as their citizens either demanded impossible solutions or retreated into religious favor. Some people gathered with their families, choosing to spend their final hours in love. Others turned to violence, deciding that if humanity was doomed anyway, they might as well prove the aliens right. Sarah sat in the increasingly empty coffee shop, watching the chaos unfold through the windows. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance, and smoke rose from several downtown buildings. Her phone finally responded to her touch, and she called her daughter Emma. "Mom!" Emma's voice cracked with terror. "Did you see?" "I saw," Sarah whispered. "Pack a bag. I'm coming to get you." "Where can we go?" "They're everywhere. Their ships. Mom, their ships are just hanging there like they're waiting for us to try something." Sarah looked up through the coffee shop skylight and saw one of them, an impossible structure that seemed to exist in more dimensions than her eyes could process, casting shadows that fell upward instead of down. It hung motionless above the city, beautiful and terrible, like a sword suspended over humanity's neck. "We're going to the cabin," she decided, thinking of her father's old place in the Cascade Mountains. Maybe if we're together when it happens. The conversation ended as power grids began failing across the region. The aliens weren't attacking yet, but their mere presence seemed to interfere with human technology in ways that suggested their capabilities far exceeded anything in science fiction. As Sarah gathered her belongings and prepared to make what might be a final journey, she noticed something odd. The coffee shop's clock had stopped at exactly 3:47 p.m., the moment the broadcast ended. She checked her watch, also stopped at 3:47. Her phone's digital display showed the same time. Outside, people were beginning to notice the same phenomenon. Car clocks, bank signs, church bells, everything had frozen at the exact moment humanity learned of its impending extinction. The countdown on the alien ships continued normally, but human time had stopped. Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October air. Something was wrong with reality itself, and she had the unsettling feeling that humanity's execution might be more complicated than anyone, human or alien, anticipated. The drive to Portland should have taken 3 hours. Sarah had been on the road for what felt like 6, but every clock she passed still read 3:47 p.m., and the sun hadn't moved a degree in the sky. Her gas gauge remained exactly where it had been when she started, 3/4 full. The radio played the same emergency broadcast on loop, the announcer's voice never changing inflection, never pausing for breath. Even more disturbing, the few other cars she encountered seemed to be repeating the same actions, a blue sedan taking the same exit, a motorcycle passing her in the exact same spot, a semi-truck whose driver waved at her with mechanical precision. Sarah's hands gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. She tried calling Emma 17 times, and each conversation played out identically, the same words, the same pauses, even the same background noise of Emma's roommate crying. It was as if the universe had become stuck, like a scratched record skipping on the same groove. When she finally reached Portland, the scene downtown confirmed her worst fears. People moved through the streets in loops, not zombie-like shambles, but precise repetitions of their actions from 3:47 p.m. A businessman checked his watch, looked up at the alien ship overhead, then screamed in terror. Exactly 30 seconds later, he would check his watch again and repeat the entire sequence. Emma's apartment building stood empty except for the sound of televisions playing the same news reports over and over. Sarah climbed to the 3rd floor, her footsteps echoing in ways that defied acoustics. The hallway stretched longer than it should have, and she passed the same apartment door multiple times before finally reaching Emma's unit. Her daughter sat on the couch, staring at the muted TV where the alien countdown read 71 hours, 23 minutes, and 45 seconds. Emma turned toward the door with perfect timing as Sarah entered. "Mom, thank God you're here. Something's wrong with time." "I know, sweetheart. We need to." "Mom, thank God you're here. Something's wrong with time." Emma repeated the exact same words, in the exact same tone, with the exact same expression of relief and confusion. Sarah felt reality tilt around her like a carnival ride. "Emma? Emma, can you hear me?" "Mom, thank God you're here. Something's wrong with time." Sarah reached for her daughter, but her hand passed through Emma's shoulder like she was a hologram. The apartment around her flickered, and suddenly she was back in her car, driving through the same stretch of highway she'd traveled an hour ago. The radio announcer spoke the same words. The blue sedan took the same exit. But this time, Sarah noticed something different. In the distance, barely visible against the sky, the alien ships were flickering too, not their usual dimensional distortions, but actual disruptions in their existence. They appeared solid for a few seconds, then became translucent, then vanished entirely before snapping back into focus. Sarah pulled over and got out of her car. Around her, the looping world continued its repetitive dance, but she remained conscious, aware, separate from the temporal prison that had trapped everyone else. She was a scratch on the record, the glitch in the system. Above her, the massive alien vessel shimmered and reformed. For just a moment, she could see through its hull to the beings inside, creatures of pure energy trapped in crystalline matrices, their forms cycling through the same patterns of confusion and alarm that she'd seen on human faces. They were stuck too. Sarah laughed, a sound that bordered on hysteria. Humanity's executioners had become prisoners of their own judgment. Whatever they'd done to Earth, Whatever technology they'd used to announce humanity's doom, it had backfired in ways that apparently defied even their advanced understanding of physics. Her phone buzzed, the first time it had done anything different since the loops began. The screen showed an incoming call from a number she didn't recognize, but somehow she knew she had to answer. Sarah Chen. The voice was human, male, with a slight accent she couldn't place. Who is this? How are you calling? Nothing's working right. My name is Dr. Marcus Webb. Was a temporal physicist at CERN. I think I know what's happening, and I think you're one of the few people who can still think clearly. Where are you? Portland. I-5. Everything's looping except me. The loops are fracturing. Reality is trying to process the aliens' ultimatum, but something about human consciousness is creating recursive feedback. The universe literally doesn't know how to compute our extinction. Sarah looked up at the flickering alien ship. What about them? They're stuck too. That's a key. Their technology interfaces directly with space-time, but human neural patterns are more chaotic than they anticipated. We're creating paradoxes faster than their systems can resolve them. Every time the universe tries to process our death, human consciousness generates new possibilities, new timelines, new questions. The road around Sarah began to fragment. She could see multiple versions of herself driving past, one crying, one singing along to music, one talking on the phone to Emma. Each possibility existed simultaneously, layered like transparent films. Doctor, what do we do? How do we fix this? We don't fix it, Sarah. We use it. The aliens made one critical error. They tried to end humanity's story, but stories don't work that way. Every ending generates new beginnings. Every death creates new possibilities. We're not just biological creatures. We're narrative entities. We exist in the telling. The sky above Portland began to crack like glass, revealing layers of reality beneath. Through the fractures, Sarah could see other versions of Earth. Some where the aliens had never arrived, others where humanity had already achieved peaceful contact with other species, still others where Earth itself had become something unrecognizable. Sarah, listen carefully. Find others like you, people who are still conscious in the loops. The aliens are trying to collapse all possibilities into one outcome, our death. But as long as we keep generating new stories, new futures, reality can't stabilize around their ultimatum. The line went dead, but Sarah understood. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or violence. It was imagination, the ability to conceive of things that had never been, to dream of futures that defied probability, to insist that tomorrow could be different from today. As she got back in her car, Sarah felt time beginning to stutter around her, like an engine trying to start. The loops were breaking down, but something new was being born from their collapse. The real battle for humanity was about to begin. Sarah found Dr. Webb in what used to be downtown Seattle, standing in the middle of a plaza where time moved like thick honey. People walked through their loops at quarter speed, their repeated actions stretching into surreal slow-motion ballets. The alien ship overhead had stopped flickering and now hung frozen mid-dissolution, its form caught between existing and not existing. You made good time, Webb said, checking a pocket watch that ran backward. Though I suppose time is relative now. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 40, with prematurely gray hair and eyes that seemed to see too much. Around them, a group of perhaps 30 people stood in various states of temporal displacement. Some moved normally, others flickered in and out of existence, and a few appeared to be living their lives in reverse. How many are there? Sarah asked. People like us. We estimate about 40,000 globally, replied a woman with an Indian accent, approaching from a cluster of makeshift equipment that hummed with impossible energies. I'm Dr. Priya Sharma, quantum consciousness researcher. The pattern is fascinating. Roughly 1 in every 175,000 humans maintains temporal awareness. We call ourselves anchors. Sarah watched the businessman nearby check his watch, look up in terror at the alien ship, then slowly reverse his actions like a film running backward. What makes us different? Webb adjusted something on a device that looked like a cross between a radio and a kaleidoscope. We think it's related to consciousness complexity. People who experience reality in multiple layers, artists, physicists, philosophers, anyone whose mind naturally operates in abstract dimensions. The time loops can't fully contain us because we exist partially outside linear causality anyway. A new voice crackled through their makeshift communication system. This is Commander Zhong in Beijing. We're seeing massive temporal distortions around the Forbidden City. The loops are beginning to invert. People are living their deaths in reverse, then being born again. The pattern is accelerating. Shaman nodded grimly. The universe is trying every possible configuration to resolve the paradox. Each attempt creates new impossibilities. We're living through cosmic recursion. Above them, the frozen alien ship began to emit a sound. Not quite music, not quite screaming. Through its translucent hull, Sarah could see the energy beings trapped in their crystalline prisons, their forms cycling through what looked like pure panic. They are trying to communicate, Webb realized, pointing his instrument skyward. The distortions are breaking down the barriers between their consciousness and ours. The sound resolved into something almost like words. Help, us, trapped, cannot, end, cannot, begin. Sarah felt a chill of understanding. They can't cancel the execution because time won't let them, but they can't carry it out either because we won't stop existing. We're all stuck in the moment of our own ending. A teenager with purple hair materialized beside them, literally materialized, as if stepping out of thin air. I'm Jazz, from the Portland group. I think I figured out how to ride the temporal currents. Look! She held up her hand, and Sarah watched it age rapidly from teenager to elderly woman to dust to nothing, then reverse back to youth. The loops aren't random, Jazz continued, her voice carrying an echo as if she was speaking from multiple points in time. They are following narrative structures. Beginning, middle, end, then back to beginning. But humans don't think in simple loops. We think in spirals, tangents, contradictions. Every time the universe tries to give us a clean ending, we imagine a different one. Webb's equipment began picking up massive energy spikes from orbit. The alien ships are destabilizing. Their technology can't process recursive impossibilities much longer. Through the communication network, reports flooded in from anchor groups worldwide. In Tokyo, people were experiencing their entire lives simultaneously. In London, the Thames was flowing backward through time. In Cairo, the pyramid were aging and rebuilding themselves in infinite cycles. We need to make a choice, Sharma announced, her voice carrying the weight of impossible responsibility. We can try to break the loops and return to linear time, but that means accepting the aliens' original ultimatum. Or we can embrace the paradox, become something beyond normal space-time, but never know what we're becoming. Sarah looked around at the frozen plaza, at the people trapped in their endless repetitions, at the alien ship caught between dimensions. What about a third option? What if we change the story itself? How do you mean? Webb asked. The aliens base their judgment on our past and present behavior. But what if we show them our future? Not just one future, all our possible futures. Every human dream, every hope, every story we've ever told about who we could become. Jazz grinned, her form flickering between multiple ages. A temporal projection of human potential. Show them what we're reaching for, not just what we've been. The idea spread through their network like wildfire. Anchor groups around the world began focusing their consciousness not on breaking free from the loops, but on expanding them into something unprecedented, a multidimensional exhibition of human possibility. The effect was immediate and stunning. The plaza around Sarah began filling with translucent figures, not trapped in loops, but acting out humanity's greatest aspirations. She saw scientists curing diseases that didn't exist yet, artists creating beauty that transcended physical laws, children playing games that spanned galaxies, lovers whose connection generated new forms of matter. The alien ship above them began to pulse with different colors, and the panicked sounds from within changed to something like wonder. Warning! Came a broadcast from the Beijing team. The temporal distortions are spreading beyond Earth. We're affecting the entire local space-time continuum. Whatever we're doing, it's bigger than just our planet now. Sarah felt reality shift around her as the loops began transforming into something unprecedented. Not circles, but spirals that reach both backward and forward through time, showing every possible version of humanity that had ever existed or ever could exist. The aliens' ultimatum was becoming irrelevant. How do you execute a species that exists in all possible timelines simultaneously? But as the transformation accelerated, Sarah realized they were approaching another kind of ending, not death, but a metamorphosis so complete that humanity might cease to be human at all. The transformation cascaded across reality in ways that made Sarah's mind ache. She stood in what used to be downtown Seattle, but now the city existed in 17 different architectural styles simultaneously. Primitive wooden structures overlaid with gleaming spires that wouldn't be invented for centuries, all occupying the same space without collision. Through her anchor connection to the global network, she experienced fragments of what was happening worldwide. The Louvre existed as both ruins and an unbuilt dream. The Great Wall of China stretched not just across space but through time, each stone representing a different era of human ambition. The Amazon rainforest grew backward from ashes, forward into crystalline biocities, and sideways into configurations that had no names. "We're losing cohesion," Dr. Webb reported, his form flickering between his current self and what looked like multiple versions from different timelines. Human consciousness is becoming distributed across all possible realities. Jazz materialized beside them, but now she appeared as a swarm of overlapping selves, child, teenager, adult, elder, all existing at once. "It's not losing cohesion," she said with voices that harmonized across decades. "We're becoming something new. The aliens wanted to judge humanity based on linear causality, but we're proving we exist beyond that framework." Above them, the alien ship had transformed into something resembling a massive geometric flower, its crystalline petals opening and closing in patterns that hurt to perceive directly. The energy beings inside were no longer trapped. They moved freely through their vessel, but their forms had become as fragmented as the humans below. Dr. Sharma's voice crackled through their communications, distorted by temporal interference. "We're receiving coherent transmissions from the alien fleet. They're confused. Their language doesn't have concepts for what we're becoming." The transmission that followed bypassed all technology and spoke directly into their minds. "Impossible species exists in violation of causality. How do you maintain identity across infinite probability?" Sarah found herself understanding the aliens' distress on a level that transcended language. They were beings of pure logic, existing in perfect harmony with physical laws. They had evolved beyond biological chaos into crystalline order, and humanity's refusal to follow linear progression toward either extinction or transcendence was literally incomprehensible to them. But something else was happening. Through the global network, Sarah sensed other anchor points appearing, not human consciousness, but something alien. The beings in the ships were beginning to fragment across possibilities just as humans had, infected by proximity to humanity's narrative chaos. "They are changing too," she realized aloud. "Our temporal disorder is spreading to them." A new voice joined their network, impossibly harmonic, speaking in mathematical concept that somehow translated to emotion. I are becoming dispersed across your store patterns. This is not termination. This is metamorphosis." Webb's instrument showed energy patterns unlike anything in known physics. "The entire local space-time matrix is being rewritten. We're not just changing ourselves, we're changing the fundamental nature of consciousness in this region of the galaxy." Through her expanded awareness, Sarah perceived the scope of the transformation. Earth had become a nexus where linear time gave way to narrative time. Past, present, and future existed as artistic choices rather than fixed sequences. The alien fleets, caught in proximity to this impossible storm of possibility, were learning to think in stories rather than equations. But the transformation was accelerating beyond anyone's control. Sarah felt her individual identity stretching across multiple timelines. In one, she was a child reading fairy tales. In another, an elderly woman watching humanity's first contact with benevolent aliens. In a third, she was something that had never been human at all, made of light and possibility. "We need to stabilize," she gasped, fighting to maintain coherence. "We're becoming so distributed we might lose ourselves entirely." Jazz's multiple selves turned toward her with expressions spanning decades. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the only way to solve this paradox is to become something that exists beyond individual identity. The alien transmission returned, but now it carried overtones of panic. "Stop, please. Our collective consciousness fragmenting. We are becoming individuals. This is chaos. This is death. Sarah understood with sudden clarity. The aliens existed as a collective consciousness, perfect unity across their entire species. To them, becoming individuals was as terrifying as extinction had been to humans. They were experiencing the birth of separate identity for the first time in their evolution, and it felt like death. "We're each other's nightmare," she whispered. "They fear becoming individuals. We fear losing our individuality. The temporal storm is forcing both species toward what we most fear." Dr. Webb, fighting to maintain his singular form, began working frantically with his equipment. "I'm detecting stable pockets, points where linear time still exists. If we can create a framework, a kind of temporal bridge between their collective consciousness and our individual awareness." A translation matrix, Sharma's voice added through the network. Not forcing either species to completely transform, but creating a shared space where both forms of consciousness can coexist. The idea sparked through the network of anchors, and suddenly Sarah felt humanity's chaotic creativity focusing into something resembling purpose. Around the world, anchor points began working in unprecedented coordination, not as a collective mind like the aliens, but as individual creativity amplified by voluntary cooperation. The effect was immediate. The wild temporal storms began organizing into patterns, complex, beautiful, but stable. The overlapping timelines didn't collapse back into linear progression, but they stopped expanding into infinite chaos. Above Seattle, the alien ship reformed into something new, not the rigid geometric perfection it had been, but not the chaotic flower it had become. Something between order and creativity, structure and possibility. For the first time since the announcement, Sarah felt hope. They had found a third option, not human victory or alien victory, but the birth of something unprecedented, a form of existence where individual consciousness and collective awareness could dance together across multiple dimensions of time and possibility. But as stability began to emerge from the chaos, Sarah realized this was only the beginning. They had prevented mutual annihilation, but now they had to learn how to exist as something that had never existed before. The real challenge lay ahead. 6 months after the temporal storms, Sarah stood on what used to be the observation deck of the Space Needle. The structure now existed in 17 different architectural iterations simultaneously, each one representing a different human vision of the future, all solid and real and occupying the same impossible space without conflict. Below her, New Seattle sprawled in directions that included past and future as well as the traditional cardinal points. Victorian mansions neighbored buildings that wouldn't be invented for centuries, their residents moving freely between temporal zones as if walking from one neighborhood to another. Status report from the Global Coordination Council, Jazz announced, materializing beside her in her preferred form, a 20-year-old with eyes that held memories from a dozen different timelines. The integration zones are stabilizing worldwide. Human convergence hybrid communities are reporting successful cooperation in 43 cities. Sarah nodded, watching a group of children playing in Pioneer Square. Some human, some crystalline energy beings who had learned to maintain individual identity while still accessing their collective consciousness. The game they were playing seemed to involve manipulating local causality for artistic purposes, creating temporary sculptures out of crystallized time. Dr. Webb approached through a probability corridor, his form more stable now though he still flickered occasionally. The Convergence delegates are ready for the final session. They want to formalize a new framework before more species detect the anomalous readings and come to investigate. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. Humanity's brush with extinction had inadvertently created something so unprecedented that it was already attracting attention from other galactic civilizations. The marriage of linear physics and narrative consciousness had produced technologies and art forms that defied everything both species thought they knew about reality. They walked together through downtown, passing the integration plaza where humans and convergence beings worked together on projects that transcended the boundaries of species, time, and individual identity. A human artist collaborated with a crystalline entity to compose music that existed in 11 dimensions. A team of human scientists and convergence theorists were developing mathematics based on emotional rather than numerical relationships. The Convergence delegation waited in what used to be the Seattle Art Museum, now expanded across multiple probability layers to accommodate forms of art that required temporal depth to fully experience. The beings no longer appeared as the intimidating energy constructs of their first contact. Proximity to human consciousness had taught them the value of individual expression, and they now appeared in forms that reflected personal choice rather than species uniformity. Ambassador Resonance Seeking Harmony. Sarah greeted the lead delegate, using the name it had chosen when it first learned to exist as an individual while maintaining connection to the collective. Anchor Sarah, whose stories prevent endings. The being replied, its chosen form resembling a sculpture made of living crystal and flowing light. The collective consensus is achieved. We formally request modification of our original judgment. Dr. Webb activated the recording equipment, devices that captured events across multiple timelines simultaneously. Please state your revised assessment for the cosmic record. The beings formed pulse with colors that had become familiar over the months of cooperation. The species designated humanity was scheduled for termination based on linear causality projections showing destructive expansion patterns. However, subsequent temporal analysis reveals that human consciousness operates under narrative rather than purely causal frameworks. Their chaotic creativity generates solution spaces for problems that do not yet exist. Their refusal to accept predetermined endings creates new possibilities for all consciousness. A second delegate, calling itself Purpose Finding Beauty in Disorder, added its voice. Furthermore, contact between human narrative consciousness and convergence collective awareness has produced hybrid forms of existence previously thought impossible. The resulting synthesis offers evolutionary advantages neither species could achieve alone. Sarah felt a deep satisfaction watching these beings who had once seemed so alien speak with a deliberate poetry they'd learned from humans. They had discovered that meaning could be as important as logic, that stories could be as real as equations. What of the other 16 species you terminated? Webb asked gently. The silence that followed carried the weight of cosmic regret. They existed in linear causality frameworks similar to our original paradigm. They accepted the logic of their termination or resisted through force, both of which led to their predicted endings. Humans alone refused to accept any predetermined outcome, instead generating infinite alternatives until reality itself was forced to accommodate impossibility. Resonance-seeking harmony's form shifted to display something resembling sorrow. Had we understood narrative consciousness earlier, those species might have been offered the same opportunity for synthesis. This knowledge changes our approach to all future encounters. A young human voice interrupted from the plaza outside. Sarah, come see what we made. Through the museum's probability windows, Sarah could see the children's game had evolved into something extraordinary. They had created a stable temporal loop that existed inside a spatial paradox, producing what looked like a small, localized aurora that sang in harmonic frequencies visible to the naked eye. The children adapt fastest to mixed reality existence, noted Purpose Finding Beauty in Disorder. They will likely develop capabilities neither of our original species possessed. Jazz grinned, her form briefly multiplicating across several timelines to express enthusiasm. That's what we do best, become something that never existed before, then call it normal. As they concluded the formal session, Sarah realized this was both an ending and a beginning. Humanity had avoided extinction not through superior force or clever diplomacy, but by being so fundamentally strange that the universe itself had to evolve to accommodate them. They had turned their greatest weakness, their chaotic unpredictability, into their species' salvation. But more than that, they had proven something important about consciousness itself. The capacity to imagine things that had never been, to refuse to accept that any story was truly finished, to insist that tomorrow could be fundamentally different from today. These weren't human quirks, but fundamental forces of existence that could reshape reality itself. Outside, the children's temporal aurora began spreading, creating new pockets of impossible beauty throughout the city. Other species might achieve peace through logic or transcendence through discipline, but humans would save a universe through the simple refusal to accept that any story, no matter how dark, could be rewritten with a better ending. Sarah smiled, watching the impossible sunset paint the sky in colors that existed in no natural spectrum, and felt grateful to be part of a species too stubborn to accept its own ending. In the distance, she could see new ships arriving, other civilizations drawn by the reality storms that had announced the birth of something unprecedented. Humanity's story was just beginning.